Hey, welcome to the Profit Builder video series. I'm Vicki, your host, and I'm the author of the book, The Profit Bleed, How Managing Margin Can Save Your Contracting Business. And these videos are all about helping you grow a more sustainably successful contracting business. And for over 25 years, I've been helping contractors increase their profits, generate more time in their day, and reclaim and refine the joy in what they do again. And that's what this video series is all about. And my goal is to help give you the thinking to be able to understand how to do that in your business. And then I actually give you tools and resources that help you implement what it is the video is talking about. So I hope you enjoy today's Profit Builder video. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about what is one thing that I see a lot of contractors, interior designers do at the very beginning in bidding projects that's causing them to lose money. And I decided on this particular topic because I had somebody recently visit me. Joe came to me super frustrated by the fact that his revenues were growing, but his bottom line was not growing proportionate. So the first question that I asked Joe was, tell me about how much you mark up for overhead and profit when you're bidding projects. And I started there because bidding is the place on projects where you begin making or losing money. It's when you're bidding that your pricing and your costs are all incorporated that are going to let you know whether or not that project has the ability to make money later on. So I started there and I said, tell me a little bit about how you do that now. And he said, I mark up what I think I can get. And I mark up according to what I'm hearing out there that other people are marking up, like of 10 and 5 or, 15 and 10 or whatever. I immediately said to him, well, there's part of your problem, because that rarely, unless you're a large company, is actually what your overhead percentage is. It's rarely 10 or 15%, again, unless you're a larger company. This is something that I hear all the time. It's a number that gets thrown around. And I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 28 years. And honestly, rarely, unless I'm working with a larger company, is their overhead percentage actually that low. And so how is it that people actually accommodate for covering overhead costs? And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But one of the first things I wanted to do with Joe is to get really clear with him about what is your overhead number actually? Like, what's the percentage that you need to mark up just to break even on your projects? Because what I find is that when people know that number and when you're clear for yourself about what is my overhead break-even percentage, then when I'm going into bidding, I can go into it with my eyes wide open and with a clarity of how much do I need to mark up just to break even. So overhead break-even percentage is basically your overhead costs that you have to incorporate as a percentage into your bids, again, just to break even. So the first thing I did with Joe is I said, let's take a look at your profit and loss statement and let's get a clear idea of what that number really is. So the first thing we did is we pulled up a profit and loss statement for 12 months. Now, one of the things that I notice a lot of times, and this was true for Joe too, is he had all of his labor for his field down under his overhead costs, and they were not in his cost of goods sold. So the first thing we did is we made sure that his cost of goods sold represented all of the costs that it actually takes to produce the revenue. So that's things like your field labor, your materials, your subcontract, equipment rental, other job-related costs, and we made sure that they were all up in cost of goods sold. So we moved some of those from overhead. The second thing we did is I showed Joe this little number that's on the profit and loss statement that is often the place where a lot of people get tripped up in not marking up the right amount for overhead. So the first thing I pointed out to him is I said, you notice this number on your profit and loss on here next to expenses, that it says 23.84%, which is that cost of $528,305 represents 23.84% of revenue. What means is that roughly 24% of his company's revenue goes towards paying overhead. And overhead, just so that we're clear about it by definition, overhead is the cost of running your business. So that's utilities, rent, telephone, insurance, not liability insurance, but auto insurance. Liability insurance should be up under your cost of goods sold. Liability, vehicle insurance, vehicle expense, telephones, owner's salary, your office manager, salesperson. Make sure that your salary is in this number. So for Joe, when we looked at this, we had to add that number to this calculation because we wanted to make sure that when we're calculating how much he has to mark up, that it includes making sure that Joe gets a salary. So you want to look at this for your business, your ability to be able to grow a profitable construction or interior design business that has enough to accommodate paying your salary as well as having funds to be able to grow your business means that you need to be including those costs into your bidding. So we made sure that we added that number into Joe's overhead expenses. So once we had the profit and loss, all those numbers in the right places, I explained the distinction to Joe just as I did to you, right? About what's the difference between cost of goods sold. Those are the costs directly related to producing the revenue. And those costs are variable. So as your revenue goes up, cost of goods sold goes up. As your revenue goes down, cost of goods sold goes down. Overhead expenses tends to stay more steady and consistent. Like your rent's not going to go down if your volume goes down. Things like that, right? You're not going to pay your office manager less because 1 month your revenue is down or even because your revenue is up. So we just kind of talked about some of those distinctions. But then we looked at this number. And I said to Joe, if you look at your profit and loss, a lot of times people look at this number on their profit and loss and they see 23.84% and they say, that's my break-even percentage. Well, it's not. The correct formula for calculating your break-even percentage in your company is to take your overhead costs and divide it by your cost of goods sold. So in the case of Joe's company, that is $528,305, and we divided that by $1,437,000. And that is the number that gave us a result of 36.76%. And I said to Joe, that's your overhead break-even percentage, 36.76%. And what I mean by that is you need to mark up your cost, your direct cost of goods sold. You need to mark that up by almost 37% just to make nothing on the bottom line. So like Joe's eyes got really big and he was like, I don't know how to do that. And you might be thinking that too. And I encourage you to go do this calculation on your numbers as well. But when, I said to Joe, I totally appreciate that. It's a big number. And he goes, I can't put that on my bids. And I said, I totally appreciate that as well. So now how do you accommodate for that? Well, you might add some of those costs up in your cost of goods sold. So if you have project management time as a principal that goes towards projects, then incorporate that cost as a line item on your bids. If you have transportation costs or vehicle costs or other indirect costs that you can include up there, like tools, you might incorporate that into your bid under a general requirements. Other people I know will actually mark up their labor, especially like in the case of Joe. His labor is a really big line item in cost in dollars of his cost of goods sold. He actually incorporates that into his base bid number that he says, well, this is what it really cost me for that labor. So those are just some different ideas to give you of ways that you can show in your bid some line items specifically related to covering your overhead cost so that it's not just this big number. In Joe's case, right, 37%. It's not this big number that I'm showing on my bid, but I can actually incorporate some of those overhead costs into my cost of goods sold, into my bid cost basis, so that when I'm presenting that to a client, they have the ability to be able to see that is more of a cost of doing the project than just a cost of marking up for overhead. And that's one of the ways that will give you the ability to be able to stay competitive in the marketplace and actually price your projects from the time that you start your bid. In submitting that proposal, this will let you do this with a strategy that's going to allow you to grow a profitable construction or interior design business. It's really critical that you know your numbers. And so this is one of the great ways to begin to know your numbers and to start to get a handle on, okay, well, that's what the number is. Now, how do I make sure to cover those costs? Am I going to mark it up as a percentage on the bottom of the bid, or can I incorporate it into some of the cost and line items that I show on my proposal so that it's built into the cost of running that project and built into the cost to the client? So those are some tips for you, and I encourage you to go do this calculation for yourself. And I recommend, actually, a lot of times what I do is I sit down with people and I'll look at like a 5-year period of time. So maybe calculate it for the last 5 years for your business and see what is your overhead break-even percentage. When you do it, make sure to include your salary in that number. And that way, when you start bidding projects, you're going to have a better handle on understanding what does it really cost me to run my business and how much do I have to mark up just to break even. Now, what we haven't talked about here is profit and marking up for profit, which was the second conversation I had with Joe, but I'm going to leave that for the next video. But I just wanted to leave you here with a couple of things that might really help you out. So at the bottom down below, I've given you a link to my article called Beyond Break-Even that will walk you through how to do this for your business and actually calculate it. Gives you the formula again and what have you. So you might check that out and go calculate this for yourself so that you can go into your bidding with your eyes wide open and start to grow a more profitable construction or interior design business, because you're bidding at the very get-go with the right numbers. They're going to stack the odds in your favor of making a profit. I hope you found today's video helpful. If you're ready to take your next step in your leadership journey and to build a great contracting business, I encourage you to check out my book, The Profit Bleed. It's full of great tools and resources that will help you implement the processes and the systems and the structure that will allow you to build a more profitable business, allow you to work less hours, and help you reclaim the joy and fun in your business and in your life again. And for a limited time, you can get my book for free. All you have to do is pay $7.95 shipping and handling. And you simply need to go to theprofitbleed.com/free. Thanks again for joining me for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on The Profit Builder.